came for. We gon' take it up from last year. Shoot on my shot, boy, I'm long range. Me and the team on the same thing. Stayed down, never switched up. Only thing changed was the game. I'm in the zone now. Nothing can change what we on now. When I pull up, know it's going down. Foot on the gas, ain't no slowing down. Aiming for greatness, no settling. Kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Taking no L's, yeah, I gotta win. Watch me kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Who running the game now? Foot on the gas, can slow down. No, my team, we holding it down. We know we running it now. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change, yeah. Tell them that's like, yeah, c'est la vie. I'm taking a shot for my enemies. I can't waste no more time on my energy. I know they know I got it on lock. Go against me, that's a long shot. Cause I'm counting wins all around the clock. Never doubt me, boy, I don't stop. Who do you feel when they make you the monster? I am not scared of none of you imposters. Taking the lead now while they watching. Think you should leave now while the option. Taking no L's, yeah, I gotta win. Watch me kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Who running the game now? Foot on the gas, can slow down, no.
Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy, Mac. And tonight, our Cleveland Cavaliers once again did battle with the Indiana Pacers, who entered tonight winners of 6 straight. The Cavs, meanwhile, were eager to get back into the win column after losing in ugly fashion to Indy on Sunday, in which they went completely cold in the second half and got extremely sloppy with the basketball, turning it over 7 times in the third quarter alone. Hell, they went 4 of 20 in the third quarter of that one and 11 of 39, or rather 28.2% from the field in the second half overall. Just a bad showing. No way around it. No ifs, ands, buts about it. But it was just one game. And tonight's rematch represents to draw even on prime time, right? TNT, baby. We getting that TNT recognition. The last time the Cavs lost, they proceeded to reel off 12 straight victories. So I was really eager to see how they would respond to their latest loss. And fair warning, Indiana entered without the services of Tyrese Halliburton, but the Cavs were without Ty Jerome, so that kind of equals out. Obviously, I'm joking. I'm kidding. But not having Tyrese didn't impact them too much last time out, and it should also be noted that Aaron Nesmith has also been out for a while now, too. That said, I just knew this was going to be another tightly contested battle. I knew it was going to be a tough matchup because of the defensive pressure that this Indiana Pacers team can put on you. Over the 6-game win streak that they had entering tonight, the Pacers actually held the number 1 offensive rating in basketball at 121.5 and the second best defensive rating at 106.5. To say they've been clicking would be an understatement. But without Halliburton out there, I was really wondering if they could replicate that second half performance that they had on Sunday. And honestly, I felt like they did tonight for many portions of the game. Luckily, Donovan Mitchell came ready to play, scoring 12 of Cleveland's first 18 points. He was locked in early, drilling 2 early triples and forcing his way to the rim at will. And considering that Donovan Mitchell was averaging just 18 points, 3.2 rebounds, and 3.8 assists, and shooting just 38.8% from the field, you heard that right, over the last 5 games, it was really good to see Donovan get himself going once more. He had been really struggling as of late. I know he had been kind of feeling under the weather, but I'm sure, and while I'm sure that played a role, it truly was good to see him kind of look like himself again. 35 points tonight on 12 of 23 from the field, was 3 of 9 from 3-point distance. But even with that being the case, right? Even with Donovan Mitchell having a very, very good game, this Pacers team, they just wouldn't go away. Pascal Siakam, Andrew Nembhard and company, they really took it upon themselves to get shit done early. But then after they got back into it, Donovan Mitchell entered the game again and quieted shit down, leading the Cavs into the first quarter with a lead of 37-30. Cleveland would end up going to a very effective zone defense in the second, which helped the team stifle Indiana time and time again throughout. And this would lead to Cleveland taking a 54-44 lead with just under 5 minutes left in the half. But just when you thought that Cleveland, they figured shit out, the defensive pressure that this Indiana team is capable of playing with started to wear on the Cavs. And as Indiana cut it to 1 by the end of the first half, that pressure, man, that full court pressure was intense at times. They forced 9 first half turnovers, which ultimately led to Indiana outscoring Cleveland 31-25 in the second quarter. And I'll say this, right? Because we all saw what happened at the end of the game. We'll talk about it with Ben Mathurin and a couple of other calls tonight. I do feel like the officiating was rather lopsided at points tonight. That said, the Cavaliers were pressured into some avoidable turnovers early on. But man, this Indiana team has been allowed to grab. They've been allowed to reach. They've been allowed to pull what seems a lot more than Cleveland would have in the last 2 games. It just feels like the defensive pressure that they were allowed to put on, especially when you're talking about the full court pressure, right? Picking them up full court as soon as the ball handler would touch the ball. It just felt like they were just allowed to get away with murder out there, right? It felt like they were allowed to get away with a lot. But officiating, it is a two-way street. And I know that there are certainly some calls out there that Pacers fans probably don't feel like the Cavaliers deserved. But I'll tell you this. I'll just tell you this right now. The Ben Mathurin ejection, that was justified. He, without a question, fouled Mobley. No question on that. And then he had the audacity to question that call, right? Bumps Natalie Sago, the ref. You don't do that, right? Not only because, frankly, call me old-fashioned. You don't bump a woman, first of all. I mean, you're a big dude out there. Ben Mathurin is. You don't do that, let alone bump a ref, period. It's just something that you do not do. And I don't know, because we saw Embiid do this earlier this season too, if anybody remembers that. Something's getting into these guys, right? And the league has to come down hard on players when they are doing this. So I'm really interested to see you, because he got ejected. It was just, picked up a second technical after complaining about it and then bumping. The league has to come down hard. It is as Michael Scoopska says down here, gotta say it. It's a bitch move to bump a woman like that, and I would say that to his face. I think so too. I think that is a rather bitch made move. It is something that you rarely see a ref being bumped, let alone a woman be bumped out there like that. And again, call me old fashioned. I just don't think you need to be doing that. I understand frustrations. I get it boils over, but dude, you got to be able to compose yourself better than that. So I hope the league actually comes down a little bit harder on him, making an example, because we're starting to see this happen more and more, and it should not be the case. It should not be happening. But that hopefully it is a learning experience for him. That's all that I can say. That is all that I can say at this point in regards to the Ben Mathurin ejection. But again, this game was frustrating for a number of reasons. Again, I felt as if Indiana was allowed to get away with a lot from a defensive standpoint, but Cleveland, in games where they are not getting the whistle that we want them to get, at least in the first half, because I do feel like Cleveland got a better whistle in that second half, as Cleveland would finish with 26 free throws to Indiana's 22. I do feel like it got a little bit more evenly called in that second half, but in games where it's not being enforced on both sides the same way, Cleveland has to figure out how to overcome that. And part of that is by avoiding some of the, frankly, avoidable turnovers that happen sometimes with clumsy basketball. We saw it with Evan Mobley towards the end of the half. We saw it at points during the second half with this team, they would turn the ball over 14 total times. And again, I feel the need to point this out. Cleveland is not a team that turns the ball over a ton. They turn the ball over third fewest in the league with just 13 per game. That's not a lot. And they only turned it over 14 tonight. But it often felt just like it did on Sunday that each possession that was turned over felt big. It felt like it led to points on the other end. And to Indiana's credit, they ended up scoring 24 points off of turnovers tonight, off of Cleveland. off of their 14 turnovers. And, Cleveland, they only allow, if I'm not mistaken, I think I posted it earlier, but 15.6 points off of turnovers per game that Cleveland is allowing opponents to do. But it was much higher than the season average at 24 tonight. So hopefully they're able to clean that up. I know teams, when they get physical with Cleveland, especially in terms of full court press, that is going to probably start to be the blueprint on how you play the Cavaliers moving forward. And Indiana is one of those teams that a lot of people love to point this out, similar to Atlanta, right? They have size, they're long, they can put a lot of bodies on you out there that can muck things up in the passing lane. So they rack up a ton of deflections and they get really handsy. And the refs really just allowed it tonight. But Cleveland has to figure out a way to overcome that. And I felt like they did at the end of the day. And I'll say this, zone defense really, really won out. Now, at the end of the day, the shooting percentages for Indiana are going to look good on paper, at least, as they shot 12 of 28 from the 3-point line. That's good for 42.9%. But a lot of these looks, man, a lot of looks that they ceded to the Pacers, they were results of good shot making. A lot of those makes were just the result of purely good shot making. The Cavaliers gave them the looks, right? This is not a team that shoots a ton of threes, and they're not a team that makes a ton of them either. But I was really, really satisfied with the end result. It wasn't perfect. Wasn't always pretty. The rotations were not always crisp. And when you're playing a zone like that, you have to rotate correctly. It's why I kept getting messages during the game about, man, Niang is having a rough game. And I understand it, right? That's my boy. Don't want to shit on him or anything like that. But some of the rotations, at the very least, you got to be crisp in that. And on in certain points of the game, I did feel like they did not rotate quickly enough, and that led to some not necessarily open looks for Indiana, but makeable ones that they ended up making. And that is why they shot, over 40% tonight. Not a huge number, just 12, but the percentage looks good. And I see Brilliant Damage down here says too much zone, in my opinion. I think they came into this one with a game plan that they wanted to force Indiana to shoot over the top, right? And I thought that it worked for the most part. They tried to clog the paint. They mucked up the driving lanes because, again, this Indiana team is not necessarily a team that's going to beat you too often from 3-point line. But when Hallie is on the court, Tyrese Halliburton, and Andrew Nembhard, these two guys are pretty good drivers of the basketball, and they do have some good catch and shoot options out there on the wings, and they can make you pay for it, right? Pascal Siakam is a pretty damn good shooter. It's a reason why he's such a difficult player to try and game plan for, because he's tall, he's big, and he can shoot. And, surprisingly, or should I say unsurprisingly, Pascal Siakam had a really good game no matter who the Cavaliers threw at him defensively. He would finish the game with 23 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, was a very efficient 10 of 16 from the field, including 2 of 2 from 3-point distance. Now, here's the thing. I saw, and I'm hoping you guys saw the same thing, but I saw Dean Wade play some of the best individual isolation defense against Pascal Siakam tonight. And Siakam just had some really good ass shots. It was solid defense, to say the least. May not have been like all defensive level or, top 10 3-and-D wing level defense out there, but I thought he held his own. And I thought that Pascal just had some good shots. You could say he was hooking them on certain possessions, on certain drives, especially on the baseline. But I did feel for the most part that Pascal actually just made some good ass shots. And it didn't matter if it was Evan Mobley on him. It didn't matter if it was Dean Wade on him. It didn't matter if it was Jared Allen on him. Just a good shot maker, especially from the mid range. You have to respect that. And he got his shots off tonight. Somebody had to generate some offense for this Indiana team with Tyrese Halliburton out of the game. And I thought that Pascal Siakam, he was the leader, right? It wasn't just him, but Pascal was definitely the man that kind of led the push on the offensive side of the ball for Indiana and what kept them in it, right? That full court defensive pressure that they can put on you on the opposite end. Pascal obviously got in on the action too, but at the end of the day, his biggest value remains on the offensive end. And it didn't matter if Wade was guarding him, if Mobley was guarding him, he just put in work. And speaking of Evan Mobley, right, I know that Donovan Mitchell is going to get the majority of the love for his offensive production tonight, and justifiably so. But if Don was the reason the Cavs stayed ahead in the first half, Mobley was the driving force behind pushing them beyond the reach of Indiana in the second half at times. Or so we thought, right? It genuinely felt like that heading into the fourth quarter. But before we get to that, tonight marks the 8th game of Evan Mobley's career in which he's drilled at least 3 triples. It was the 23rd game of his career in which he attempted at least 4. 10 of those, my friends, have come in this season alone. He's been phenomenal. He has just been so phenomenal this year. And that obviously did not change tonight as he was just putting up that shot with full confidence. And Mobley, he should finish the season with the way that things are going as an above 40% shooter. And I know that he will probably go through some sort of slump at some point. Let me knock on wood. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But in the case that it does, I've been satisfied with what I have seen from Mobley this season. Now, coming to the year, I was in the mindset of this guy having to attempt, 3, 4, maybe 5 per game in order for the defense to begin to fully respect his ability to shoot. And while you look at the numbers, right, the majority of his attempts have been what is deemed wide open by the NBA, or at least NBA.com. The defense is slowly but surely respecting his ability to shoot. They are slowly but surely having to close out on this man whenever he is out on the perimeter. And that just pays dividends for the front court spacing that you have, really the spacing on the entire court, on the entire offensive end of the court for Cleveland, but specifically the front court pairing between Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. It allows you to do a lot of different things. If you're going to have Mobley out on the perimeter or, waiting to get into that dunker spot as Jared Allen is down low. And, that's when you see some of the more beautiful big to big passes. Some of the alley oops that we see is from Jared Allen being, down low. And then he'll find a cutting Evan Mobley as he's going baseline for an alley oop out there, and that usually is based upon Mobley being out on the perimeter, right? Whether it's the left or the right corner. But it just opens the floor up for so much more, not only for those two, but for the ball handler too, right? The drivers. It gives that driver much more space and just it opens the painted area up, and you're not seeing the clogged paint like we consistently saw the past. I thought he started to make a jump towards the latter half of last season, but if you're talking about the first year of the Donovan Mitchell experience in Cleveland, the paint was certainly clogged because neither Jared Allen nor Evan Mobley was taking that shot. And now that Evan is, it just makes the fit between all of these guys seem that much better. Now, I get there's still some issues, at least on the defensive end, when you're talking about Darius Garland and Evan Mobley being undersized, or Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell rather being undersized, and you may never be able to fully get over that. But that's why you have the backline of defense in Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. And now that these dudes are doing their own separate things and look like two different types of players on the offensive end, it's just icing on the cake, and it makes this team a difficult team to beat because it's pick your own poison. In a game where Donovan Mitchell goes off, you still have to worry yourself about Evan Mobley. You still have to figure out how to contain Darius Garland. Jared Allen isn't going anywhere. He had a pretty solid game, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, just a rebound short of getting yet another double-double out there. If there's one gripe that I had from an offensive standpoint, it would probably be with the duo of Isaac Okoro and Dean Wade. I guess you could probably lump Sam Merrill in there too, as those three would combine for just 3 points on a very rough shooting night. Isaac Okoro would go 0 of 3 from the field. Dean Wade would go 0 of 3 from the field, and all 3 of those were 3-point attempts, and Sam Merrill would go 1 of 5. So you got a combined 3 points out of those guys. Absolutely not good enough most nights if you're not getting a big time performance from Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. But I'll live with it because I felt legitimately like Wade, he did the best that he could from a defensive standpoint. And I do understand that Isaac Okoro is working his way back from a shoulder injury, same type of shoulder injury that limited that limited Dean Wade to kind of being a non-factor last season. I think the AC joint sprain, same type of injury. And Okoro, while he played 7 minutes tonight, I think brilliant damage. He played 7 tonight, but still, he has not necessarily been able to knock down shots. I think he is now, if I'm not mistaken, 1 of 15 since returning from injury. It has not looked good. Hasn't looked good for him, but I'm going to give him some time. Question is, for Kenny Atkinson, when Ty Jerome is healthy enough to play, who's the odd man out? Because as it stands, the Cavaliers essentially went 10 deep tonight. You got your starters and Darius, Donovan, Wade, who seems entrenched there for the time being, Evan and Allen. Then you have your reserves who are getting big minutes in Karis LeVert, who played 27 tonight. Strus played 22, Dieng 17, Sam with 12, and then Isaac with 7. So it was essentially a 10-man rotation tonight. I highly doubt that Kenny is going to elect to go 11 deep when Ty is available from illness, but we'll have to see. Some nights could be certain guys, certain numbers could be called, and other nights guys might not see the court. And I think that it could potentially be a situation in which if, let's say, a Dean Wade is struggling offensively, maybe you turn to and give Strus more minutes, and you divvy his minutes up between Isaac and Strus. Or if Sam Merrill is struggling to get it going, maybe you give his minutes to Isaac Okoro, or more to Max, or more to Ty. And frankly, that's the job of Kenny Atkinson to sort out, but it's a good problem to have. And it's also another reason why there is going to be looming conversations around the trade deadline, right? We know what the one major need. You could argue there's two. If you can see my fingers, if you're watching YouTube, you could argue that there are 2 needs, or at least 2 wants on this team right now, and that is the third big. I don't think we can really question that at this point. The Cavaliers could use a third big, a reliable third big, because as it stands right now, Evan Mobley has essentially functioned as your backup center. Dean Wade is functioning as your backup 4 and giving you some small ball 5 minutes at times. Hell, we've even seen we've even seen George Niang play very small sample size of minutes, but at that position. But we can definitely use a reliable third big. And then the other obviously is another tall wing. But the Cavaliers can reasonably acquire one of those, probably the third big, by the trade deadline or on the buyout market. I don't think you're cooking with, with grease. But at the end of the day, some of the conversations that we're going to have are going to be some tough ones, and they're going to come to a head around the trade deadline. You have players that are going to need new contracts, and Sam Merrill and Karis LeVert and Tristan Thompson and Ty Jerome. All of these guys need new contracts. They're all expiring, with LeVert and Jerome probably being the guys that are going to be looking to get pay increases, or in the case of LeVert, probably steady. I don't know if a team would be willing to pay him more than he's making now with his current age being factored in. But Jerome, he's definitely due for a pay raise. And the Cavaliers can, offer all of these guys or bring all of these guys back, but who knows if that's actually going to be the case. So they have some things to sort out. As it stands right now, they're about $1.6 million over that tax threshold. And I don't know what direction they're going to head in, but I can tell you this, being that the Cavaliers have such a deep rotation right now and a lot of pieces that kind of overlap, a move could be made. We'll have to see. But again, these are good problems to have. At the end of the day, though, it was really, really nice to see this Cavaliers team overcome some of the issues that really stymied them on Sunday's matchup. That full court pressure, really the only way that they were going to be able to do that was to, get the ball moving down quickly, get it down quickly because you have some space to do that. And I felt that they did that, especially in the second half. But on the offensive side of town, I thought that they got a much better performance from Donovan Mitchell. I thought that Evan Mobley really, really stepped up, and I could not have been prouder of the core four tonight. I thought each one of these guys brought something to the table. Darius Garland, even after he had kind of that injury scare, got back out there and gave the Cavaliers 24 points and 7 assists on 9 of 18 from the field, including 2 of 8 from three-point range. He did turn the ball over 4 times, but I'll live with that. I think the production from Darius Garland, who is the reigning Eastern Conference Player of the Week, has been pretty damn good this year. And I guess, that's really all that I can take away from this one. Again, this is a Tyrese Halliburton-less Indiana Pacers team that the Cavaliers were heavily favored to beat in this rematch. And now they will have to go on and have a rematch with the Oklahoma City Thunder, which that should be a tough one, right? Hopefully Ty Jerome is back for that game because I got a feeling that we are going to need a spark plug off the bench. And I know that Karis LeVert, he had a pretty solid game when you factor in some of the other things that he does outside of simply shot making. 7 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists from Karis LeVert, tied Darius Garland for the lead in assist for the Cavaliers tonight. He has some real good dimes. But I'll tell you this, Cavaliers, they are in a good place. 34 wins, 5 losses. It doesn't get much better than that. Let's hop into the chat, shall we? Richard Hacker says, tonight proves last game was an oddity. I think that some of the things that we saw on Sunday reared their ugly head tonight. Again, the full court pressure that they came out with in the second half of Sunday's game, they brought it the entire game tonight because they recognized that it legitimately gave Cleveland some issues out there. I thought the turnovers, again, were a pretty big issue. Just 14 tonight, but it felt like they gave Indiana way too many opportunities with carelessness on that end, which resulted in 24 points off of turnovers, which is right in line with what we saw on Sunday as well. Not something that you want to continue to see. B Skrills says, I think the Cavaliers should try and make a move to get Terrence Mann off the Clippers. Lou definitely ain't giving him no minutes. He definitely could give you some buckets off the bench. Honestly, I just don't think there's any room, man. I just don't see it, right? You have Karis LeVert, you have Ty Jerome, you got Darius Garland, you have Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus will play minutes at the 2, you got Sam Merrill still, you have Isaac Okoro who may see some minutes there. There's a lot of mouths. That's without even mentioning Craig Porter Jr. or Jalen Tyson. If the Cavaliers acquire anything, to me, it's got to be a backup big, at least somebody who can play backup 4, backup 5. You got to go that route, or at the very least, if you're able to acquire another tall wing, to me, that's the only thing that I'm looking for right now. But the moves on the margins that the Cavaliers can afford to make, just very, very slim right now. And that's why I'm hoping for a guy like Duop Reith. I think he would be a perfect fit for what Cleveland currently needs right now. He can space the floor, and he's got some size to him at 6'11". He's not a terrible defender, not a terrible rebounder. I think he could be just what this Cavaliers team needs. And he's cheap, right? He's under contract for this season. He's under contract for next season for about $2.2 million. I think he could be acquired for maybe a couple of second-round picks. Maybe I have to entice them enough with a player in return, because Cleveland has to shed some salary. And if you went straight up like that, you could literally complete a deal straight up for Sam Merrill, a deal straight up for Tristan Thompson, a deal straight up for Jalen Tyson or CPJ. And this is by no means saying that I want to move on from any of those guys, but I'm just saying from a monetary standpoint, there are some options that they can go with. And I think that Duop Reith would be a pretty good fit as far as what could potentially be available for cheap, because that's the name of the game right now. Surrounding the core 4 with cheap, effective talent. And we've seen Reith, even though he's 28 years old. For any of you who did not know that, Reith has only played 2 seasons in the NBA, but he's already 28. So I think he could be acquired rather cheaply. I know Robert Williams is also available for Portland, but his salary is just way too high for Cleveland to facilitate any type of move without sacrificing the likes of a Karis LeVert or a Max Strus or somebody like that. But yeah, they got some things to figure out getting closer and closer to the trade deadline. But with the record being what it is, I think that it's hard for me to complain, right? It is really, really hard for me to complain about roster moves or the needs at this point in time with us being at 34-5. Just difficult. As it currently stands, the Cavaliers hold, at least according to Bleacher Report, if it hasn't updated yet, a 5.5 game lead on Boston, an 8.5 lead on New York, who is coming off a loss to the Detroit Pistons and our old friend JB Bickerstaff. What a story they have been this year. Got to give them the props. Detroit's at 21-19 right now and has clearly surpassed their win total from last year. And they're playing much better basketball. And personally, I think they're going to make the playoffs. We'll have to see what ends up happening with them, but I could not be happier for JB Bickerstaff and the Detroit Pistons. They've fought through adversity with the loss of a couple of key pieces over there, but got to give them credit where credit is due. And I think that's probably a good place to leave it at tonight. Again, the Cavaliers will be back in action in prime time yet again. I think another TNT game against the Oklahoma City Thunder, a heavily viewed matchup the first time around. There's no reason to believe that it'll be any different come Thursday. That said, as I always tell you guys, if you like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you want to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you an invite. If you happen to be watching over on X, do your boy a favor. Go over to YouTube right now. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber to the It's Cavalier podcast. Hit that notification bell too, so you never miss out on live post-game coverage or some of the different Cavaliers related content that I tend to drop from a week-to-week basis. That said, go Cavs.